What's going on, Orlando? This is Ken Posick here in Orlando. Tonight, we're going to talk about all things real estate, theme parks, and living in Orlando, my favorite city in the country, for so many different reasons. I spent the entire day, well, other than I had a few hours in the morning of meetings and then 5 hours of followed up with like content that we did. We're talking about people retiring in Orlando. And so getting to visit all of the major kind of retirement communities in Orlando was eye-opening and like so cool to see how some of these communities are set up. A lot of Del Webb communities, obviously the villages, there's a lot of cool stuff. So check that out on the channel next week. Talking about people moving here. I interviewed somebody who's a fan of the channel who retired and moved here. And so that sort of thing. But before we get too far into the show, I want to talk about you guys. Where are y'all watching from tonight? This is the way that I love to start every show out, is just figuring out where our audience is hanging out at, because I want to make sure that we're kind of figuring out the content that you guys best want. Are you living here locally already? Are you thinking about moving here? Maybe you're just kind of interested in Orlando. Did you just come across the algorithm on YouTube and you're like, what's this guy talking about? Let's check in. So I appreciate it so much. Everybody checking in. Vickin's checking in. I know he's local. Good to see you. Stephanie's checking in. Let's see, from Simpsonville, South Carolina. I appreciate you always checking in. It means the world. Victor checking in from Denver, soon to be Lake Nona. Welcome. Star checking in from Horizon West. Good to see you. L. Roberts checking in from sunny, warm Austin, Texas. We've got Toulouse checking in from Connecticut. Good to see you. Pickles checking in all the way from the hills of Mineola. I was literally just there like 5 seconds ago, I feel like, today, checking out the Del Webb community there. And you said, thanks for glad to have you back live. We missed you. I missed you guys as well. As you guys know, this is by far my most favorite thing that I get to do. Really, I only miss it if I'm very sick or I'm traveling. And so it's very rare that that happens, but I try to do at least 40 live shows a year. And unless I'm sick, which I was last week, I had the flu, it was ridiculous, and or traveling. So I'm glad to be back. Juliet checking in from Long Island, New York. I appreciate you hanging out. RR checking in from DC. He also said first, but I'm telling you what, man, you were actually probably fourth. People were here 30 minutes early. It was wild. Christian checking out from Claremont, and got a lot of other people. JJ hanging out from HC. Grateful to call Orlando home. So am I as well. A lot of other people. Please keep checking out. Ahmad checking in from UCF, people checking in from Indiana, and so many other places. Thank you so much. As we go along, this show is for you. I mean, I'm here hanging out to answer your questions. So if you guys feel free to interrupt anytime, I'll do my best to answer every question tonight. Stay as late as we need to until things kind of fizzle out. I do have a format for the show, though. I kind of go through and I say, what are some of the main topics that I get asked a lot about, whether that's from the agents on my real estate team, the DMs over on Instagram, people sending me stuff. What's going on? What do I think? And one of the main stories that was talked to me or asked about this past week, it was like, what's going on with the overall real estate market? You know, we talked last year that things definitely slowed down in Q3, Q4. And, you know, what is the market going to collapse with the interest rates? You know, they were supposed to come down by now, even here in mid-February, and they haven't. What is that going to do? And so there's an interesting article. Actually, let's get this set back up. Oh my goodness gracious. It's been that long, Pickles, that I have not been here, that my studio got all messed up on me. Let's see here. If I go here, that's just Zoom. We don't want to see that. Monitor, face cam. Let's go over here. Goodness gracious. I got to be able to show you guys the monitor over here. Goodness. Oh my gosh, I feel like an amateur over here. Let's make this bigger. Make sure we close you guys out. Good times. Just talk amongst yourself. I thought this was all good to go over here. One of the main topics tonight, though, is going to be the overall sales spiking in Orlando. What does that actually mean? And so what does that actually mean for people that live here and that sort of thing is what we're going to dive into on our first thing. Why is this doing this? Mr. Chase Farmer, where are you, sir? Goodness. Monitor one. Let's get rid of you. Let's reset here. Oh, my gosh. There it is. There it is. We're back. We're back and we like it. All right, there we go. It only took me 500 minutes. Here we go. All right, so Orlando real estate data shows a spike in housing market. And what does that actually mean? Because it's actually, in my opinion, a little confusing. Orlando real estate shows a spike in housing market. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Does this mean that the market is doing extremely well? And so you start going through some of their some of their data, and they're basically saying that the new listings have actually gone up in overall pricing over 46. Sorry, new listings hit the market at 46% increased from December, which is typically our slowest time of the year, up to January in 2024, with 3,500 new houses hitting the market in January. Which, if you haven't been paying attention, that's a lot of houses. 3,500 new homes hitting the market feels like a lot. And so you start figuring out like the seasonality of everything. November, December are historically really slow times in Orlando. January, the number of sales then are typically really slow because you didn't sell a lot. You didn't put a lot under contract in December. And then January has like a slower start. Our pickup for the time of year is usually February and March. So this actually seasonally wise makes sense, but you don't have to just, take it from me. Let's actually look at what the numbers are showing here locally. So if you look over here, new listings. So this is the 5-county area. We're talking Polk, Osceola, Orange, Seminole, and Lake. There were 1,244 new houses, condos, townhouses, villas, all that good stuff. The only thing I take out of here is timeshare because that's another animal. 1,244 that were listed over the past week. And then if you look at how many actually went pending, meaning actually accepted a contract, 1,243 actually accepted a contract. And so if you think about that from a logical standpoint, it makes sense that, hey, all of these new houses are hitting the market. Yes, the overall number of homes have spiked, meaning that there's a lot more, but there's actually a lot of them that are selling pretty quickly as well. And so I look at this other report that I find interesting. I've got this little weird box. This is so weird. I feel like somebody was messing with me over here. Let's see. Let's move you over here. We'll make you a little bit bigger and lock. Boom, that looks a little bit better. All right, so looking at the overall number of weekly sales, this is just single family houses in the 5-county area. There were 414 houses and a 3-month supply of houses. So the smart students that are part of our show that know that, hey, listen, if you have a 3-month supply of homes or less, that's actually a fairly healthy market. That means like things are good. If it was a 1-month supply of homes, which is what it was back in 2022 and 2021 when things were insane, that's when you get pricing that goes skyrocketing. A 3-month supply keeps things pretty just level, going up 2 to 3% a year, which is what I want to see as a homeowner and you would want to see, because that means that things are in a healthy standpoint. When you start seeing 5, 10, 15% increases, that's like an unhealthy kind of thing. But that doesn't mean that we're like in an affordable spot either. If you look at overall, where are the actual homes selling fastest and things going crazy, you can see under 250,000, there's a 1-month supply of house. 250 to 300, there's a 2-month or so. 300 to 400, 2-month. 400 to 500, 2-month, almost 3-month. And then things start to pick up. Once you start getting over $1 million, this is where actually a lot of opportunity lies. If you are in the $1 million plus range, oops, my dome over here is covering you guys up. If you're in the over $1 million range, there's a 6-month supply of houses, which means that it is a buyer's market. If you are in that price point where you're like, hey, I actually think that I have $1 million budget and I want to buy a home, right now is the time. There are homes on the market sitting there for 40, 50, 60, 70 days. And if you're in that price point, you're able to move on it. Now, the problem is if, the average sales price in Orlando is, as of today, let's see, average sales price is $509. And so the majority of the people buying a house are in those competitive price point areas still. And then the people that are in the luxury homes, $1 million plus, that's when it starts to get a little bit interesting. There's a couple other reports here, and I'm going to get over to your guys' questions here in a few minutes, that I thought were actually interesting and kind of an interesting insight into where we're at as an overall market for real estate here. So Lance Lambert over at Resi Club Analytics. This guy used to write for Fortune magazine, and he was their in-house analytics guy. He was so good, and he left and started his own company. I was super proud of him. If you follow him over on Twitter, he's so good at breaking down just the data, because I'm not about feelings. I'm about like, show me the data, because that makes the most sense. So he said, hey, let's look at the overall market. So home prices are up 47 of the nation's 50 largest housing markets. And this is data compiled from Zillow and then Public Record and a bunch of other stuff. And he compressed this down. I thought this was actually fantastic information. You look over at Orlando here, month over month, pricing went down 0.2%. So 2%, so 20% of 1%. It went down month over month. Year over year, though, pricing was up 3.5%, which actually just goes ahead and talks about, it reaffirms kind of what I'm talking about. Like 2 to 3% a year is a healthy kind of number. Here's what's really interesting. Shift since March 2020. This is actually, I think, a scary thing. Up 50%. We were actually one of the largest markets in the country in terms of overall appreciation. You had Hartford, Connecticut, San Diego, Providence, Rhode Island. Those were all up in the high 40s. You had places like Tampa up 58%, Raleigh, North Carolina up 47%, Phoenix up 47%, but Orlando really hanging strong, right? 50%. Now, here's the other thing that I find interesting is that it is also pocket driven. Like you have some areas of Orlando that are still crushing it and pricing is still going up. You have other markets that are not doing well. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those in just a minute, but I want to pop over here and answer some questions. So, Flo, so did a super chat. Thank you so much. You don't have to do that, but thank you so much for doing that. Off topic, but I attended the public meeting for the new surf park in Hamlin last night. Horizon West just keeps getting better and better. You know what? I agree. I think it's really cool. I saw a ton of people throwing shade on it over on Facebook today. People talking about how oh, it's just another thing we don't need in the area, because I'm like, listen, you complain when it's housing because there's too many houses. And then you complain because there's too many banks or too many restaurants or too many whatever, and then there's now like other cool things to do and you complain. So people just complain. I think it's like kind of a sad thing. Chris, can you hear me, buddy? I just want to hear, you said the mic seems to be going a little wonky. I think the wrong mic is recording. Oh my dude, let's see if you are correct. Let's see. Does that sound better? Goodness gracious, this is the last time. Let's see. How does that sound, buddy? Checking in from North Carolina, New York. Says, we can hear you. Sounds good. All right, awesome. Sean TV says, hi, what's going on? A bit late, but I made it. NYC Iron, good to see you. I appreciate you hanging out. Buy and Fix and Flip says, what's going on for a live? What's going on? Hello from lovely Winter Park by the Villas. I love that area. For sure. My Winter Park place, we are getting ready to rent it out. I'm actually, whole nother story, whole nother video, but it's going to be an interesting time. All right. So let's talk about areas that we've talked about just briefly in the past in terms of growth areas for real estate and where I see interesting kind of topics. So there's another article that Lance over talked about on the Resi Club. AirDNA said these are the 25 best places to invest in short-term rentals in 2024. And I would love to hear just your guesses on this before I show you what city was the number one city in Central Florida that you would want to invest in a short-term rental. Let me know what you might think that is down below, and we'll see who gets it right. L. Robert says the audio does sound better. I so appreciate it. Winston says, I'm checking in from Hollywood Studios. My friend, ride some Star Wars for me, man. Rise of the Resistance. What's going on? Harrison asks, am I renting out Winter Park in order to move to Sunbridge? No, my Winter Park place was actually an investment property. We bought this dilapidated we should have tore it down, hindsight being 2020, because every time we opened up things, every time we opened up a wall, there was something wrong. And so we put a lot more money into it than we thought we did. And so it's kind of like at this point, like, do I want to break even and or lose a little bit of money? Or would I rather rent it out, do a cost segregation on it, and then sell it in 4 or 5 or 10 years. And so we're kind of at that point where, like, I think I'd rather just invest. I believe in Winter Park. Obviously, Winter Park's one of the most solid assets that we have here in Central Florida. And so, I'm like, do I just, maybe rent it out, pull some of our initial investment out, and then go and do it again? But this is interesting. All right. So going back to the question, what was the number one short-term rental market in Central Florida? What did people think? People said Davenport. Nope, definitely not. Celebration. Actually, Davenport's really good, but it's not one. Celebration. You can't do short-term rentals in Celebration, so that's not one. Kissimmee. Nope, definitely not one. Let's see. Someone said Horizon Hunters Creek. Nope, definitely not. Let's see what happened last night. The communications tower. Nope. Renting's good. Okay, here's what it is. All right. So AirDNA says here's the top 25 areas that you want to invest in 2024. Number one for Central Florida. And not only that, not only Central Florida, but it was one of the tops in the entire country. And it was Winter Haven, number 6 in the entire country, best short-term rental based on AirDNA. And here's why. They're saying that the average sales price is $263,000. And so that's obviously an affordable entry price. Occupancy was roughly 62% on all of the active AirDNA. So they pulled data from Airbnb, HomeAway, a bunch of other different websites, compile it into there. Average daily single short-term rental rate was $206. Average annual short-term rental income being $31,000. And then in terms of the overall rental demand score, which they look at how many rentals are there, how many are actually going pending, how many actually getting rental, is 94, really one of the highest rental rates out of the entire country. And I thought this was interesting. I think that there's other areas that have higher nightly rentals. They have more short-term rentals, but in terms of demand and overall price of home versus what you're actually making, Winter Haven, I wouldn't have thought about it, because honestly, when I think about short-term rentals, I always think to myself, as close to the parks as possible, because that's where the most demand is going to be. And then overall, though, the pricing there has gotten so out of control and the competition has gotten out of control. So it makes sense to me how somewhere like a Winter Haven, it's still super affordable. It's not so far from the parks. You're like 45, 50 minutes away. Someone could get a really nice house for $200 a night, still super cheap. Interesting. I thought it was super interesting. Johnny says, Haines City, man, you're close, man. Super close. Central. So Spring Hill, Central Florida. Yeah, I guess. So it is on the list as well. Spring Hill. I don't think, when I think about like somebody who's coming to stay close to Disney, I don't think Spring Hill, but it is number 4 on the list. Typical home value, $389. Occupancy rate, the exact same as Winter Haven at 62%. Average nightly rate, a little bit higher at $251. And the AirDNA demand score, you can see here, that's just interesting, lower than Winter Haven at 86. But you're not wrong. Technically, I guess it would be Central Florida. Interesting, though, for sure. Let's see. We got some questions I'm going to answer here. So I'm renting near Sidell in 429. I want to buy between 500 and 600. I was thinking of mid Claremont. What do you think of Claremont will look like in the next 5 years? Listen, I'm bullish on Claremont just because of the connection that they've made there. I think that they've invested in the road network Lake County has. And so I think everything coming from Wellness Way and the Olympus project, which is a little slower than I had hoped, but definitely still coming down the pipe. I like Claremont quite a bit, especially mid Claremont. I think that, you get out of the Four Corners area, so you're not as cramped in regards to just overall traffic. But anywhere up and down, kind of like Olympus project north, is going to be a really good opportunity for you, all the way into Mineola and that sort of thing. So I think it's a good one. Let's see. Cynthia Cabrera had a question. I'm trying to go back and find it because people were chiming in, which I so appreciate it. Cynthia says, where's a good area to rent for someone who's looking to buy a vacation home in Orlando, but wants to rent it first to see what it's actually like to move to? So again, a vacation home, I'm guessing, let me know if I'm wrong here, but in that you want to use it as a second home and just kind of see what Orlando's like. You don't want to rent it when you're not here. If that's the case, you have to ask yourself, are you coming here for the theme parks? If that's the case, then you want to be kind of as close as possible. Celebration's great. Winter Garden, Horizon West is great. Windermere's great. If you want to be close to the theme parks, if you want to be close to like Universal, obviously Dr. Phillips is great because of Restaurant Row and that sort of thing. But it's going to be price dependent. I had a lot of people, looks like, chime in and they talked about Baldwin Park and downtown and all that kind of stuff. All of those are great options. But it really depends on like why you'd want to summer here or like, vacation home here. If you want to rent it out, that's a whole nother world. So let me know. Diz Deb says, what do I think about the second Starbucks coming to the Flamingo crossings? I didn't know about it, but I'm going to check it out after this. A second Starbucks would be insane to Flamingo crossings, just because there's not a lot of people living there yet. Jeez, oh, Pete's. But geez, I mean, every time I go to that Starbucks, and I was there this morning checking out Del Webb Oasis, every chair in that place was packed, and there was a line. So that's kind of wild. So Kyle says, Kyle Gross says, Apopka Oaks at Kelly Park, Toll Brothers has released bungalows starting in the mid 300. That's an amazing area. Yeah, that Apopka area, I mean, 429, especially like the Wild Oaks area, which is going to have some great builders and a lot of development. I think they are saying they're spending like $3 billion in that area, which is a lot. But if you take that Kelly Park area across 429, there's a lot of great stuff over there. But Toll Brothers in the 300s is pretty great. They're rear entry. But yeah, something like that I think is great. Yeah, so this is a good one from Ms. Gonzalez. Says, what are some good areas that a couple is trying to start a family between Kissimmee and downtown? We know Hunters Creek is nice, but are there more that you would recommend between Kissimmee and downtown? I mean, Hunters Creek is great. I think that's an easy one to pick from. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it depends on what you're after, but between downtown is kind of like such a large. You've got Dr. Phillips, which I think is a really great one. The high school there is really well rated. That's a slam dunk, but again, price point dependent. Dr. Phillips is quite expensive. Hunters Creek is amazing. It really depends on what you're after in terms of like house and that kind of thing. Jelly's World says, hey, we're looking to relocate and purchase our first home in the low 300s. We're looking between Haines City, Point Sienna, Winter Haven. In your opinion, what's the best? And I would say, so every time somebody asks me this exact question, what's the best between Haines City, Point Sienna, and Winter Haven? In my opinion, why? It's going to be, let's look at the maps together. I'll show you. And here's why I'm going to tell you what I'm going to sell you. Okay. So in my opinion, this is just my opinion. So we look over here on the map. Hopefully you guys can see this. You got Haines City, Point Sienna, and Winter Haven down here. So Winter Haven is by far the most established, but you can see it's kind of the farthest away from me. But that doesn't mean that it's bad, right? I mean, you've got Lakeland is right next door, and I do believe Lakeland is like the new hotness down the road. It's just 50 minutes away from me, and so we don't sell an hour away from me. We don't really sell a lot of Lakeland. We do quite a bit in Haines City and a lot in Point Sienna. There's just not a lot in Point Sienna. And so you're going to get probably a really big bang for your buck in that area. And then Winter Haven, I think, is a big opportunity. Haines City feels like Davenport Heights to me, like because it's just right there. And you actually do have access to a little bit more in terms of like what's already been built out in Davenport. But in my opinion, going back to like what this is, I think if you're just talking about house and like you're not going to leave more than a 15-minute radius of your house, I think it's Winter Haven, Haines City, and then Point Sienna, in my opinion. But they all have, very similar housing stock, very similar builders. Price points are all kind of like right there on the bubble. But if you're trying to get close to Orlando for work or like anything like that, then you're probably going to want to choose Point Sienna because it's going to be one of the closest. Hopefully that helps. JJ says Hunters Creek. Come on, Ken. Yeah, I said Hunters Creek, bro. I said it. Jeez, oh Pete's. Just kidding. Says Windermere Townhouse is still a good investment. Yes. Yeah. I mean, where else can you get into Windermere in a reasonable price point that still rents out really, really well? You have to be careful on homeowners association costs because some of those different developments are very, very pricey. And so you have to be careful about that, what's going on. But overall, I think that I love a good townhouse in Windermere. Beto says, when's the best time to cash out of house in Horizon West and invest in another area? I mean, it depends on your horizon. Like we have a house in Horizon West. Yeah, I said that. And so I think you got to decide like where's your cash on cash going to be best used, and do you have a mortgage right now? Because if you have a mortgage at 2%, are you going to take out $250,000 and go put that into somewhere like a Mineola or a Sunbridge, St. Cloud area, somewhere where you feel like you're going to have a little bit more growth opportunity there? It's going to be your I wouldn't sell if you have a mortgage at 2.5%, I guess is all I'm trying to say. Like for us, we have a current house, and the reason we haven't sold it yet to go buy something bigger and or invest in a couple other investment properties are simply because my money is so darn cheap. So could you do a home equity line of credit, take that cash and go invest in something else? Yeah, I think you do that at any time. There's not as many banks that are willing to do it right now, but that's a really great opportunity for you to like pull some cash out, keep your primary, go invest into something else. That's something that I have considered doing quite a bit of lately. But man, our number one reason that so many of our markets right now across the entire country are so locked is because of these low interest rates that people are hanging on to. Cons, traffic for Haines City and Winter Haven, but Point Sienna is the same way now. I can't get into Point Sienna to save my life if I don't want to wait 45 minutes in traffic. But you're not wrong. Jason says, would you buy a 6-bedroom, 3.5 pool with 1.6 acres in Longwood on Markham Road for that seems like a very specific question. I mean, listen, I don't know the house and I don't know the address, but if you're talking 6 bedrooms, that size on that acreage for roughly 900 makes sense to me, but I don't know the history of the house. I don't know which one you're talking about specifically. But God, an acre and a half in Longwood alone seems awesome. Nicole says, I just got a contract on my first home after looking for 3 years. Finally, congratulations. That's insane. Congratulations. We got to love that. Vickin says, Ken, check out the ice bar in Orlando spot. I found it's money. Which one? Are you talking about on iDrive or which one are you talking about? Let's go. Hilo says, will this stay on your YouTube page? I have to go, but I want to check the rest of this later. Yeah, it definitely will. These go up for quite some time. Jason says, meaning is it a good investment term, long term? Are they expected to go up in value? Yeah, Jason. Okay, here's the deal. So I think that like Horizon West will probably start slowing down in terms of overall appreciation because you have so many of these new neighborhoods coming online. So like our home value went up 50% in 3 years, which was insane. I don't expect that to happen with all of these other new houses coming online. And so there are going to be other areas, but like where I would tell you to invest also has a lot of other new construction. Where I would say is like, like a Winter Park or a downtown area like Soto, Delaney Park, some of these areas that are already built out, but have really high potential to go up. I think that those are always going to be better plays. And so you have to look at your finances and say, okay, again, if you're selling a house with a 2, 3, 4% interest rate, and then you're going to go buy one with a 6, 7, 8% interest rate, does the finances actually work, or would it make more sense to just stay still? That's something that we have to like look on a case by case basis, but I'm more than happy to do that for you. Like we do investment analysis for our clients often in this exact situation. Like if I was going to sell, what do you think I would get, after taxes, after commission, after title, all that good stuff. And then if I deployed that capital in another area, what would that look like? Or if I kept it and do a home equity line of credit and then do the same thing. So we do this often. I mean, I own a bunch of rental property myself, and I'm constantly looking at like, where's the best place to deploy capital. So always happy to help. Chris says there's still very low inventory in Michigan. Yeah, there definitely is. All right, let's talk about a couple things that I think are interesting going on in the city of Orlando. Have you guys heard about the Canopy? What's going on in the Canopy? So this was actually announced, is this today or yesterday? One of the two, within the past 24 hours for sure. So if you don't know where this is actually over. So there's the Kia Center, Amway Center, whatever you want to say. I guess Kia. There's the federal courthouse. This is the annex building. So this is right underneath I-4. They used to be called the under I-4 project, and they're calling it now the Canopy project. And I'm actually going to get rid of myself here. Boom. The Canopy project area. And so this is a huge area underneath I-4. And in a while there, people were curious, like what they wanted to do with this area and like what would ultimately become of this kind of spot. And so people talked about doing like a park underneath. People said it was going to be just parking and a whole bunch of other stuff. And so finally, we've decided as a city what we're actually going to do with this area. And so here's what it's going to look like. This is underneath I-4, and you can kind of see the road here. This is like West Church Street. My guess is right here.
This is wild looking to me. So it's like public art. They're already putting like lights under there. You can actually see, and they're going to do green spaces, and there's going to be a park area and a whole bunch of other stuff underneath I-4. And this is actually going to be what sounds like a 2-year project. The city is saying that they're going to be investing a bunch of stuff in the stuff, bunch of stuff underneath the area, starting with a temporary 150 parking space underneath the 2 area. Let me show you where the temporary parking, and they're going to use it for both parking and like ride share drop off, which I think is actually really smart because every time I go to the Kia Center, it takes me forever to get anywhere. But kind of right in between Pine Street and Central Ave, this spot right here is going to be 150 parking spots for people that want to go enjoy the nightlife and everything else going downtown. Some of their overall initiatives, their 6 core principles, as they said, connection. So they want to seamlessly integrate the different modes of transportation, all downtown, safety, and prioritizing the well-being and security of visitors. Now, this is where I'm the most nervous about this area downtown, because Church Street, if you've been down there, like I'm at the Kia Center, we've got a partial Magic tickets. What is it? Season tickets. We actually bought more for next year. I'm so excited about how they're doing. But you go down there and it doesn't feel super safe up and down Church Street. And so if they don't do something to help the unhoused and kind of clean up that area, this is going to not be awesome underneath. And all of the investments they're making over the next 2 years are not going to be awesome. And so I hope that they have a plan for this. The next thing that they're hoping to do is community. So provide ample space for gathering, festivals, culture events. They want to add greenery because right now it's a concrete jungle underneath there. Mobility. So creating extra pedestrian friendly walkways and bike paths to encourage active lifestyle. And then also, which I think is very, very cool, is the artist immersion. So enriching the canopy, we'll have immersive art installations, which they're already doing throughout downtown, which I think is really, really cool. This whole spot right here, these renderings are just absolutely incredible. And I think will set us apart, something different that you don't see. I mean, you've got Lake Nona. They've got so much public art over there. So very cool around the Wave Hotel. Downtown is starting to do more and more of this. And so I think it's very, very cool. That being said, I think that, again, they need to make sure that they invest in safety. And if you don't know what's going up and down this thing right here, I think it'll be a connection point for sure to the Kia Center. Then if you walk right down Church Street, there's going to be a food hall. You've got Bumby Arcade, a bunch of other stuff going on right on this corner over here. And so if they're able to actually activate these areas and make that Church Street eventually really, really connected between the 3 stadiums, I think this has the makings of something really very cool downtown. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm just kind of curious, like, if they have this space lit up at night and there's parks and greenery, and are you at least going to see it once to see if it's something that would be you want to hang out? Cheyenne says, what's going on? Cheyenne says, Everby home versus Winter Park home for $950. What should you recommend and why? Again, I think it comes down to square footage and the overall size of your house. If you've got a $950,000 budget and you're looking in Winter Park, you're going to be looking at a 2,000 square foot house, depending on if you want amenities or where it's going to be at. If you want an Everby, you're going to get a 3,500 square foot house. And so it really comes down to the overall size house that you want, livability, and then back into your price point. That's what I tell everybody. Vicken says, what's the better option, renting or Airbnb? Vicken, renting long-term is always the better option for an investment standpoint. I mean, unless you're self-managing and you're doing all of the bookings and you are handling the cleanings and you are handling, and you have no property manager involved, because that's where like the people that make the most amount of money in short-term rentals and Airbnbs are the project managers, the property managers. They're making 20, 30, 40% off the top. And unfortunately, that's the majority of your profit. And so if you're looking at it from a perspective of like, of just overall ROI on an investment, long-term investment is going to be an easier way for you to go about. Devar, so what do I think about Toll Brothers Haven Oak community in South Orlando? Listen, I think when I saw where it was located, I was like, that's wild to me that they're going to be spending those kind of that sort of money. I love Toll Brothers. I think they're a great builder. But from what I hear, it's going really well. Like there's a ton of demand, which makes sense. There's nothing else like it in that area. But I was kind of like, wow, there. And then straight up, they were selling them like crazy. Jelly's World says, what are some better quality entry level builders in the area? Currently looking at Highland Homes, Lennar, Century, DR Horton. There's so many horror stories. Yeah, I mean, so there's two things to know about that, right? When you go online, it's very rare that anybody goes online and raves about their builder. It's just the nature of this, unfortunately. I'm constantly like talking to my clients, like, "Hey, would you mind leaving me a review? Like, you say you had a good experience. Would you go leave me a review?" And thankfully, almost 800 people have done so. But it takes a lot of like pulling teeth. When people are more willing to do it on their own is is when they have a bad experience. So you will see more nightmare stories online than anything. I'll preface all of that. That being said, if I'm looking at your list, if I had to like put them in order here, I would probably say DR Horton and Highland Homes are going to be very similar to me, and probably where I would start. And then like Lennar and Century would be on par as well, like right below them. I think if I had to rank them, Highland Homes and DR Horton, and then right below them, Lennar and Century. They're production entry level homes for a reason. And honestly, if you buy them brand new, at least you have a warranty and you don't have to really worry about too much over those first 10 years. Buying them secondhand, usually you're going to want to have to get into doing a bunch of remodels because they build a kitchen at a very standard, very basic kind of thing. And you could always upgrade it yourself as well. So then I think what it comes down to is which neighborhoods have more established, like actually you could see the homes, see how they wear over the next 2 years, because a lot of times like you'll see, did they hire a good stucco guy? Are there tons of cracks everywhere? You kind of get to see how the neighborhood wore a little bit. And then I would want to talk to the warranty manager and see if he's somebody you jive with, because warranty managers run new construction and can make or break your experience with a production builder like this. Because if you buy a production home and you close and that warranty manager sucks, you will have a terrible experience. But if that warranty manager is like on it and they're on site, oh, it's night and day difference. Pablo, I'm not super aware of Costco or Sam's Club coming to Mount Dora, but my partner Bree lives there and she lives in Bree's Mount Dora. I'm going to text her. Let's see what she says. Let's see if she answers. All right. How affordable is Winter Garden? Rye Guy says, how affordable is Winter Garden? So the average sales price in Winter Garden is going to be roughly $600,000, depending on what you're looking for. So like we just sold a house in Winter Garden over the weekend. It was $615,000. The house was 2,300 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and absolutely beautiful inside. Great house. And that's kind of what you're going to get. There's obviously $400,000 or $500,000 houses. Townhomes in the high 3s, low 4s, and then multi-million-dollar houses. So it just depends on what you're looking for. JJ says, hey, yo, Ken, come be a vendor and experience Hunters Creek Easter Festival, Bunny at the Park on 3/30. Oh, man, we'll see. Robert says, I love living in Claremont. As a client of ours, man, I'm so stoked to hear that you said that, man. I think it's a good move, especially for what you were looking for. Here's a really good question from Eng Yang. So even in Osceola, there are loads of parcels of vacant acreage, but I'm told that finding a reliable custom home builder means 2 years of waiting. Is that true? Yeah, I mean, so 2 years might be a little aggressive, but if you're looking at a custom home build, typically it's 30 to 90 days to get kind of your plans drawn up. And then you're looking at 30 to 40 days to get actual approval for permits. And then it could take a year to build. So 18 months is very realistic on a custom home development. And so that's why a lot of people opt for production homes. Or you find like a spec home that's just recently finished or getting ready to be finished. Like I've got a really great house in Mineola that I'm representing the builder. This house easily would have taken 16, 17 months to finish, but now we're just now listing it now that it's finished. And I think it's going to go fairly quick. So there's those opportunities for sure. Brooks says, I tried emailing, but we're in the research phase, moving to Orlando in 2025 to find a home to live in within 2 years as use it a vacation rental. What resort communities allow both? Yeah, I mean, so there's plenty of areas that you can live in there that, and also Airbnb it out. You're looking at like Reunion's a great example because you can live there full time. I would say 15% of the neighborhood lives there as their primary, and 85% of them rent it short-term rental. But there's probably at least a half a dozen that I can think of that won't require you to move out after 6 months. Like there's a condo community in Winter Garden. It's the only place you can short-term rental an Airbnb in Winter Garden. The Grove. They have this thing with the county where it's like you can live there for exactly 6 months out of the year, and then you have to move out. And really, they do this because they want to make sure that they're going to maximize revenue. Like they make money selling you the place, developing the land, and then the rentals overall. And so you just have to make sure. A Reunion's one that sticks out for me. Davenport has Champions Gate. There's plenty of areas in Champions Gate where some of them you can only do long term, but then the area that you can also do short term, people live there full time sometimes as well, and then just rent it out every once in a while. So definitely plenty of options. Neil says, hey, Ken, I love your content. Great work. I've heard you mention more than once that you've purchased homes for each one of your kids. How would you do this if one wasn't a billionaire? So I'm not a billionaire for sure. Maybe one day. No, I'm just kidding. So here's what I would do. I think that anytime you have the opportunity, you can get an FHA loan for 3.5% down. And anytime you buy it and you rent it, you buy it and you live in there, you can always two years later turn around and go do it again. There's nothing that says that just because you use an FHA loan that you can't get one every 2 years as a primary and then rent out your old one. That's a really easy way to buy an investment property. Now, some people will say, like, I don't want to move that often, and maybe that's a little bit of a hassle. Well, listen, I mean, if you want to build wealth, sometimes you have to do things that are hard. And so you can easily do that and go get 3, 4, 5 houses with only 3.5% down. And I think that's a really great way to go about it. There's other ways that you can get a little bit, if you want to like level up your investing knowledge and kind of really dive in to other things out there, whether it's wholesaling or getting into stuff that's like, courthouse foreclosures. Some of that stuff takes more cash, but using other people's money to help you buy something and then refinance it out. There's options out there as well. It just depends on how savvy you are. But the easiest way for like Joe Schmo, anybody who has a job that doesn't want to be a full-time investor and like really get into that world, the easiest way, 3.5% FHA, move every other year. You look up 10 years from now, you've got 5 houses and hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. And then your kids go to college, you're able to cash them out. And now you got college paid for on someone else renting out your house. That's pretty cool, in my opinion. I think so. Pablo says, Bree was my agent. Well, then you could text her as well. She'll tell you what's going on. Samuel says, I second having a good warranty manager. I contacted mine multiple times in the past months, and he has addressed all my issues. At this point, I'm just looking for something wrong. That's unheard of. I mean, the fact that not unheard of. That's a good thing. That's what you want from a good builder is like, they're only as good as their warranty that they stand by. Here's an interesting one, Samuel. I don't know if you know this, but I found this out over the past month. So now it used to be a Florida standard where there was a 1-2-10 warranty where it was like you had 1 year bumper to bumper, meaning like everything in the house was covered. And then 2 years was what we would call like whatever's behind the walls. So like plumbing, electrical, HVAC, that kind of stuff, 2 years on that. And then a 10-year structural warranty. And that was the standard that every builder had to offer. Now, apparently in Florida, there's a bunch of builders that are only offering a 6-year structural warranty. And like, I don't know. I mean, I would think that there's like 1 or 2 things that either the structure is going to go wrong right away and you're going to know because you'll have stucco cracks, or it's going to be like 8 to 10 years from now. And like, I would want the longer, the better. So make sure you ask your builder, like, which one are they offering? Because I think it matters. Are you going to change their mind one way or the other? Probably not, but it's just something good to know. Harrison says, am I paying PMI on the 3.5%? Yeah, you're going to pay PMI. So you're going to have a slightly higher interest rate for sure. But again, it's 3.5% down instead of 20% down, which many people can't swing. Victor says, hey, would I recommend living near to your job? I've heard horrible traffic stories in Orlando. Also, we have a new build Century in Denver, and we've had all kinds of issues. Yeah, listen, I mean, if you are in Orlando, traffic in some areas is a nightmare. In other areas, it's not that bad. Like I was all the way up in Mineola right before this show, and I got down here to Winter Garden in like 18 minutes, and I could have easily got all the way to Disney in 30 minutes without traffic issues at all. Now, there are going to be sometimes a day where 429 or 417 or definitely I-4 get worse than others, of course. But that's why I always suggest, like, when you're out and about looking at homes online, like, do that traffic drive from work to home at multiple times of day, get to know the traffic patterns and see if you can get around and be comfortable with it. I think it's a no-brainer. D Hawkins says Lake Nona has the worst traffic ever. I'd be curious to see where you think that is. Like Narcoossee or where else? CK says I live in New Jersey. It's a walk in a park with traffic. That's true. I did a man on the street video last week, and people were talking about, where they came from, and that was my number one question, asking people, like, where is it that you came from? And then I was asking what the traffic's like, and literally every person that had moved here from like Charlotte, North Carolina was one lady, New Jersey, New York, Chicago, like they're either like, traffic's not bad here. What are you talking about? But if you come from some other area where like you never had traffic, it seems like an absolute nightmare here. So I definitely get it. Did you guys know, this is an interesting, I found this out. Somebody sent me right before we went live. Did you go, we landed on the moon today again? So Intuitive Machines makes first US moon landing in 51 years. And I believe they actually took off outside of Cape Canaveral. I know the company was out of Houston, but I believe they took just right outside of where we're at here. But this is the control room here. 51 years, finally landed. Successful landing. How crazy is that? And speaking of the whole like Space Coast, like many of you guys know, I dig through permitting. I've got a bunch of different programs that I look at, and I was looking through different permits and figuring out where the most amount of money is being spent in Central Florida and or within the hour radius. NASA, look at these crazy numbers. NASA is spending $375 million. And it says Orlando, but it's really not. It's over on the coast for restoration and compliance. You've got L3 Harris expansion, again, over in Palm Bay, $190 million. As I was going through like all of these $100 million plus sections, like there's a ton of stuff going on over in Cape Canaveral all the way down to Palm Bay right now. It's wild to see how much money is being pumped into the space industry. And the cool thing about that is it's like really siphoning over into Orlando as well. There's like Lockheed Martin, Simcon Aviation, there's like Raytheon, there's a whole bunch of other ones here locally, which I think is a cool thing for Orlando for sure. Tomas says, I think I did. Tomas, yeah. Just close on and home in Mineola with Kristen. Very excited to see the area developed in the past year already. Well, congratulations, man. I'm stoked for you. Mr. Sean says, what's going on? It's been a while watching from Hollywood Studios, man. I appreciate you checking out for sure. Victor says, so going back to where you work and then the drive. Yeah. I mean, if you worked in the VA in Lake Nona and then lived in Lake Nona or like St. Cloud or something like that, that would be slam dunk. Super easy. All right, guys, I am going to be wrapping up. If you guys have any other questions, let me know here. I do have a few other questions I'm going to ask, but you got a couple minutes to drop questions before we wrap up for the night. It's been awesome hanging out with you guys again. It does mean the world that a couple hundred of you guys spent some time with me on Thursday night. It means a lot. Sean says, curious if I try the Apple Vision Pro, what do you think of VR and 360 could do with how we change real estate? I have not, and yet I'm going to try one over a friend's house next week who just got one. I'm very excited. I think that if you've ever seen where like you've got the Matterport, where you can Matterport is online and it's a 3D walkthrough of a house, and you have these things where you can actually put glasses on and walk through on the Matterport. It's okay, but in my opinion, I was looking at like what could we do with like Vision Pro, but with the Matterport and or like with video. We do so many home tours. Could we do that to where somebody could actually walk through a house without having to physically see it? That would be pretty cool. Jellies, this is the question I was going to ask. So thoughts on using the builder's lender versus your own? Also, does your agency cover Haines City and Poinciana? Yes, we've got people that on my team that cover Haines City and Poinciana, so feel free to reach out. But here's the question on using the builder's lender versus your own. You need to compare apples to apples. So many builders will say, hey, I will give you $15,000 in closing cost incentives if you use ABC Mortgage Company. But what you need to look at is, are there a bunch of fluff fees in their closing statement? And you just ask you, hey, can you give me a good faith estimate, just called a GFE, going through to make sure that your interest rate that they're quoting you and your closing costs aren't all inflated just to offset some of the closing cost incentives that you got from the builder. And then you take that on a lender that maybe we recommend or anybody else, wherever you bank, and just compare the two. What are the interest rates? What are the closing costs? And if you were to go on your own, could you get a lower payment if you forego the overall builder incentive? Many times the builder incentive actually is really good and you will save money. But other times, depending, especially smaller builders that partner with different lenders, will say, hey, we're gonna give them a little incentive to use you, but we'll just work it out in the back end. And then the buyer ends up actually losing, and that's not cool. Dizdad says, hit the thumbs up. I do appreciate it. That means a lot. Kim says, hey, do I need any good pool companies? Actually, we're vetting a couple new ones out. I don't want to put anybody on blast, but we had 3 or 4 that we were recommending. They got so overworked and so behind that their work definitely started sliding. And so my team has actually been tasked to go through and find our vendor, like level up our vendor list. So I'm happy to send that over to you, Kim, once we kind of check through pricing and timing. And, they came out and bid one thing. Did they actually deliver and those sort of thing? Because I really want to make sure that we are referring good people. Vickett says, am I a San Diegoan Chargers football fan because of Coach Harbaugh? No, I am not. I am still a Lions fan. That is for sure. Speaking of Matterport, are there a lot of opportunities for virtual tour photographers to work with realtors in Central Florida? Yeah, I mean, we're looking at actually hiring somebody on staff to do this for photos, Matterport, kind of like any media with our listings. We already do a lot of video, but somebody on the listing side, we work with 20 to 30 sellers a month, and so it would be cool to be able to like own that opportunity and then start doing some of the things, pushing the boundaries on Apple Vision Pro, where other realtors are just still taking iPhone photos. All right. I think we're wrapping up. People are starting to leave, and that means it's time for me to leave. I so appreciate you guys. If there's anything I can do to around Orlando, you're just curious about Orlando, DM me over on Instagram. I'll do my best to respond to everybody I can. And then if you're looking to buy or sell a house, anytime, invest, relocate. My team and I, we want to be a real estate resource of choice. I have 25 of the best realtors in all of Central Florida. That's why our Google reviews are so good. We've got people that are kind of specialists in every part of Orlando. So if you're looking in the Villages, or you're looking in Lake Nona, or you're looking in Haines City or Maitland, we've got somebody on the team that specializes in that. And I'm still in the business as well. Just, as we grow, definitely needed to grow the team and that sort of thing. So we are here whenever the time comes. The orlandoreal.com/YouTube is the best way to get going. We'll see you guys on the next video.